And then
Yeah.
the second name that popped into my mind because of a special birthday card is somebody who's younger than I am, but who has the same birthday.
Hmm.
I have an unusual birthday. It's St. Patrick's Day. I don't know whether you celebrate that in your.
No, and I know when it happens, but I didn't. We don't usually don't celebrate it,
So
except
it's,
if
an,
we're near an Irish pub where they celebrate it, of course. But,
so it's a wonder. It's a great gift from my parents to give me that day because it's not a holiday. We don't, observe it as a holiday in the United States, but everybody celebrates it. So
mm,
in Nashville on St. Patrick's Day, if you went downtown, everybody would be wearing green and drinking green beer and celebrating St. Patrick's Day. So it's an Irish holiday, but everybody celebrates it. So it's a wonderful, wonderful birthday. And every now and then I run into somebody who has the same birthday. And every now and then it's a very special person. And every year we remember we remember each other. And that's Diana Larsen.
mhm. Yeah, I knew that. I was waiting for the name because I knew you had the same birthday. It's it's interesting because when Marilyn sent the mail for your birthday, I put it into my calendar. I was like, wait, this is Diane's birthday. Did I mix it up somehow? And
Yeah,
then on the birthday itself, it turned out to be indeed the day of both of you. So yeah, it's I find it wonderful that two wonderful ladies in the agile community that meant so much for the agile community also share a birthday. That's again an international festivity day, let's put it like that, like St. Patrick's Day. So it's yeah, it's yeah, serendipity on its best, I would say,
yeah.
to
And
because
I'm
right
I'm
now.
sure you don't if you don't need me to say anything about Diana Larsen, but I met her at the Retrospectives Gathering. She introduced me to Norm Kurth, and she has been a mentor, a friend, just somebody who's shared a lot of things with me. I love her. I love Diana.
Well, just maybe for people, what when you so this is a good thing you talk about the retrospectives gathering. I think many people these days know Diane for the book that she wrote about retrospectives with Esther, but maybe don't know that there is actually it's all a weekend. I think the retrospective gathering where it's really focusing just around retrospectives that's been going on for more than 10 years, I think, even
Yeah.
longer.
I haven't been
Um,
I haven't been for a long, long time, but we used to alternate. We'd have a gathering in the United States. I hosted it a couple of times and they came to Phoenix, Arizona. And then we've had many in Europe where people who are interested in retrospectives get together. It's for several days and we talk about, well, it's all open space. So we talk about anything. One year I talked about all of the cognitive neuroscience behind better meetings, and I said, how can we do better retrospectives based on the latest neuroscience? So you can talk about anything, and the
and
people who are there are just amazing people who really care. It is so much fun. It's just a wonderful time together. And I love all those people. And I should also mention Esther. It's just Diana and I share a birthday. And so I thought of her first.
it's but isn't for whatever strange reason I was not able to go to retrospective gathering. It's almost every year on my calendar as something I want to go, and it's probably one of the first ones I'll go to first again in physics. But uh, do I remember correctly that retrospectives gathering there is also that the family is more or less invited, or it isn't something around the families? I don't remember anymore, but
Well, it certainly can be. And people did bring their families. And we did have time when, For instance, if we were in a special place, like when we came to Phoenix, we had times when we did a little sightseeing and we took people on trips. We had one in the UK where we went to Stonehenge. I will never forget that. Um, Diana and I were at the same gathering and we got to go into the middle. I mean, if you go to Stonehenge now, you kind of have to stay on the outside and walk around it.
Mhm.
But we were able to actually go into the middle of that. And I have pictures of her standing in the middle of Stonehenge. And it was just awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, there
But
are family
that's how I
things.
remember it. Exactly. It's a kind of a conference, but it feels lot less corporate. It's really much more, yeah, family thing. It's a nice, I would say, being friends together, learning about retrospectives and everything around that. That's how I always remember people talking about it. So that's definitely also one of the things to make publicity for. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. Diana remembers what we have learned in the agile world and what we have forgotten. We talked about human solutions for human problems, about creating normal each and every day, and the balance of being a well known agilist and being Diana at home. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello, my name is
Hello.
Ivan, and I'm here with Diana. And here for me is Belgium. And Diana, when I say here Belgium, I'm going to show it. So this is where I am, and let me see, or let us see the people where you are, and you are. You always keep telling me people that you're Diana from Portland. That's it,
Yes.
huh?
Yes.
So this, and if Google it takes a little bit longer than I'm used to, but that's
Yeah.
somewhere, Diana, in Portland. Of course, I
Yeah.
just selected Portland.
There you go.
I don't know
I,
the exact location, but it's
that
somewhere
yellow
near that.
dot is very close to where I am. Yeah.
Voila. Woohoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say here now, for me it's 8:47 in the evening. What time is it on your side?
Just a little before noon here.
A little bit for noon. So just to
Yeah.
give people a little bit the idea on what that means to be to recording things like that. And let's bring you
Right.
back online. We don't need Google anymore now that we know where we are. So we jumped right into that before even a real introduction. Diana, for the people that don't know you, who are you? Just say a little bit what you want
Who
people to
am
know about you.
I? Well, in the who is agile context, I guess. I mean, we all have multiple selves,
Yes.
right, in different contexts. But in the who is agile context, I think I may be primarily known as an author, which is somewhat of a surprise to me. But I have co-authored a lot of books. I like to write collaboratively, so I'm a person who likes to write collaboratively and to pair write at the same time in the same place with folks. So some of the books that I have collaborated on are the Agile Retrospectives book, the Liftoff book, the Five Rules of Learning book,
Yes, I almost
and
forgot that one.
yeah, and and then not well, kind of a book, but so the Agile Fluency model, we have an ebook for that one. And then I've also been included in James Shore's book of The Art of Agile Development, the new edition that came out last fall.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I have been working the last 2 years on a book called Lead Without Blame, Building Resilient Learning Teams with Tricia Broderick. And I'm working with Esther Derby and David Horowitz now on the second edition of the Agile Retrospectives book. So though most of my career has been coaching and consulting, primarily in different varieties of change management that include, agile transitions and things like that. I think most people know me as an author of one of those various things, which is a huge surprise to me because it never occurred to me earlier in my career that I would ever be a model builder or a model contributor that for things other people could use. So that's been very sweet. I joined the Agile community before the manifesto in the late 90s, very late 90s, when I met a lot of the people who ended up being Agile Manifesto signers. And most of them were extreme programming folks. So that was my first introduction to the Agile world, was through the lens of extreme programming. And what I've been doing ever since is looking for ways to contribute to the Agile community with writing and speaking and making relationships and consulting and so on. Ever since then, it's become my tribe and my life, my work life.
You work life. Yeah, that's important to at least mention that there is another part. You were part of the Agile Alliance, I think, for a long time as well. You were chair or something like that. I don't know the exact.
I was asked to join the Agile Alliance on the board shortly after it was formed, like a couple of years after it was formed, and I served for a couple of years. And then I left the board, but then came back in 2007 and spent another 6 years as a board member, including being a board chair and board and treasurer and some of those things. So yeah, that was a very satisfying contribution, basically, to I felt my role as a leader at that time was to really set up the Agile Alliance with a structure and a philosophy that would sort of internally that would serve over the long term. So that's a lot of what we did while I was in a leadership role there, and I'm pretty proud of that, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. This is around the time that I learned about the Agile Alliance. So there I have some fun memories of that as well. And I know that you rescued me once at an Agile conference when something went wrong with the booking for my hotel room, and you helped me out at that moment. I think that was some memories there.
Yeah, we've bumped into each other several times over the years.
Yeah, exactly. So well, let's jump right into that first question. Let me bring it on screen. What is something that people usually don't know about you but has influenced you in who you are?
Well, one of the things that has really influenced me is my early career was with more in the organization development, actually organization design world. And I didn't talk about that very much when I first entered Agile, because organization development had a kind of a bad press in the software world. But I did talk about organization design. But that's really what introduced me to work around team-based organizations and what does it take for a team to thrive in an organization. The understanding the ideas behind high tech and IT in general, not just the software development part, but all of that sort of technology. I worked with people in silicon wafer factories and so on for a number of years before I met the people who transformed my life, who became part of the Agile movement after they signed the manifesto. So I think a lot of people don't know about that part of my history, and the fact that a lot of the contributions that I have made in the agile world actually were influenced by my experiences in the 80s and 90s doing that work, that other work.
Yeah, and this is I think where, well, yeah, that's a different kind of diversity that you bring there,
Yeah,
because like you say, many of these other people that signed the manifesto all came from the XP world, so most of
right,
them basically programmers, and trying to, yeah, from a
right.
programmer standpoint, saying what needed to change, but you came from a different angle in that
Yeah.
sense. And I think before the manifesto, you were even part of the group that was around the retrospective gathering. Was
Yes.
that already alive at that time? I think. No?
Actually, that was forming at about the same time that the manifesto was forming. It was, its idea was first created by Norm Kurth, who wrote the Project Retrospectives book. And he's actually how I met all those other people. It was an event he was hosting where I met Ron Jeffries and Martin Fowler and a bunch of those folks. And the retrospective gathering got started. We started planning it in 2001. So it was being planned at the same time the manifesto signers were sort of trying to decide what they wanted to do with their manifesto. And so those two efforts have kind of grown up together, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't remember anymore the whole
Yeah.
timeline. Let's
Yeah.
put it like this. But yeah, it's definitely things that were happening around
Yeah.
that time.
Well,
So
that might be something else that people don't know about me that has really influenced me, and is I'm kind of a historian of the things that have happened in my lifetime.
mm,
I mean, I love reading history and learning about past history, but I also enjoy sort of keeping track of the evolution of things. Like just like the conversation we just had, noticing what was the timing and what things were happening in parallel and what came first, and that sort of thing is always it's always something that interests me. And you can always rely on me if you need to know when something happened. I might be able to tell you. Somehow
wow.
my
Okay.
brain just keeps track of those kind of things. I don't know.
That
Yeah.
that's good to know. I always have a hard time to remember what I did yesterday, or was it the day
Yeah.
before, and try to remember
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
I need to look back at the timelines for Agile,
Yeah.
then I need to contact you. So
Yeah.
that's good to know.
For instance, I think the first time that you and I met was at a conference in Göteborg in Sweden.
Hmm.
and, and that's where we began our conversations with each other. And that one stands out to me because it was during the time of that 2 or 3 day conference. One of those days was my birthday. And,
Hmm.
and the, I didn't,
Yeah,
I
we
mean, and
we had
unbeknownst
everybody
to me,
singing.
yes, everybody sang happy birthday to me in the big auditorium there. But you were a
Yeah,
central part of that event. Yeah.
yeah, but it made a big impact on me as well. Just
Yeah.
having, well, first of all, having what 400-500 people singing "Happy Birthday," but also realizing it. I was a speaker there as well, and
Yeah.
realizing that we did that just before your talk, and
Yeah.
afterwards I realized that, wow, you prepare a presentation, you know how to do something, and then just before that, people put that much energy in it. It's interesting, but it throws you also off your
Yeah.
feet if you want to start a presentation. I remember us talking about it, that yeah,
Yeah.
it was okay, and it was I loved the presentation that you
Yeah.
did. I remember that, but I also remember that you were saying, like, yeah, I had a hard time starting up afterwards because I was so blown away by
Yeah.
the audience singing for my birthday, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, it's from an audience point of view, it's like, oh, we do something nice, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's probably better to do it at the end of the presentation than just before, because yeah, you're so,
Yeah. Then everybody
it's,
wants to get out of the auditorium. Nobody wants to hang
yeah,
around. So,
yeah, that depends on how you do that. I
but
also
that,
remember that.
content is always linked to
Yeah,
you,
for
with you, for
okay.
me. And one other is the conversations that we had about including our children in our work. You and I have had a
Yes.
number of those conversations over the years. So yeah,
Yeah, I think, well, you're one of the people who inspired me to work with my children, and I think later on we'll talk about William as well,
yeah,
so that
yeah,
we'll talk a little bit about that at that time, I think.
mhm,
Um, I wanted to go back a little bit. That conference was for me also interesting because I did the leadership game, and I still remember. I think you were sitting on the floor, and yeah, it was some very interesting thing that happened because
yeah,
it was not you. Yeah, it was not good for you. I don't think I don't remember health. There was something, but it wasn't healthy for you to sit on the floor. There was something,
right,
and
right,
I remember that nobody noticed it, and I was at that point my goal was an observer in my own session, so I
yeah,
noticed it, and I remember asking people about it. Okay, did you notice that Diana was on the floor? Did you notice that yeah, she kind of, yeah, it wasn't
hmm,
a good situation. And I remember the people leading that part totally had no clue, and it was a
hmm,
really powerful thing because also for me it was very hard for me as a presenter, knowing you and knowing, okay, this is my session. I care about the health of the people who are there, but should I intervene? Well, partially not, because it's what people need to learn. But at the same time, I need to yeah, I worried about you as well. So that was a very mixed feelings that I had there. So
yeah,
that was an interesting, for me, it was an interesting session.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there was a time in my life when I was having a lot of problems with my knees and I was walking with a cane. And
mhm, right.
I think that was that same time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Love,
that was the thing.
I'm
I
so
forgot the
grateful that's
details, but
over. I'm so grateful that's over. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
but it's interesting how
Yeah.
I remember some parts of it, but not all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I want to go to the next question in
Yeah.
if you had not been to IT, and for me, agile, I see it as a part of IT because yeah, it's a little bit bigger maybe, but if you had not been into our agile space, do you know what could have become of you? Do you have any idea what would have been there?
I do. I do have some ideas about
Mm.
that because, I mean, my role in IT, as it has turned out, is very different from, I think, the role I would have had. My dad was a systems analyst. He started
Mm.
working with computers right after World War II. That was his whole career. I grew up with flow charts in my living room, and I was always fascinated by them. And so when I went to college, I actually went to college a little later than a lot of people. After my children were born, I went back. And my intention was to get a computer science degree. I assumed that I would go into the same field that he was in and become an engineer. At the time, the terminology was not really sorted out yet. I mean, this is like the late 70s, early 80s. And, what's a developer, what's a programmer, what's an engineer, I mean, I don't even know if it's still clear. But I
Well, we
started that.
keep inventing new names these days, but at that
Yeah.
time there were just a few, but even that they were very confusing
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah.
So I started out in that program, you know, writing I learned to write code in BASIC. We were working primarily on a huge mainframe, but it was right at that time when the transition was happening between those huge mainframes and things like the Commodore 64, or even before that, the TRS and the Timex Sinclairs and all of that. So I was very much exposed to that change in the computer world, from from big mainframes to workstations to home desktops, and I think I would I if it hadn't been for a professor. I mean, this is a weird story. So I had an instructor who one day took me aside and asked me, what were my plans for going into the field. And so I shared that with him. And then he said, computers are getting so easy to use. Soon they will be voice activated. We are not going to need the kind of engineers and systems analysts that we do now, and
Wow.
architects that we do now. And he said, so I think you shouldn't continue in computers. I think you should go find something else that you're interested in and just stay really computer savvy when you get there. Well,
Mm.
basically, he was counseling a woman out of his program.
That was the question I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
Was that what? Because if you look at it, I think I
yeah,
just last week put something live with GPA, who said that
yeah,
around that. I think it's about the same time he
yeah,
said about 100,000 developers we had in the world,
yeah,
and so here you have a professor telling you this is not going to be a lot of things, and
yeah,
now we have a few million developers. So
right,
definitely he was wrong.
right.
And
Well, what he didn't, his focus was primarily on hardware. And he
mm,
didn't, I think part of it was he didn't understand the explosion of software that was about to happen. But also, I think I was the only woman in any of his classes. And I think he
yeah.
wasn't comfortable with that. So I think there were a number of factors there. But so if I hadn't been in that,
Mhm.
and so what I did was I had taken some other courses that were things called human relations in business and organization, the bit more business focused kind
Mhm.
of thing. And I said, well, those things were kind of interesting to me. And so
Mm.
that put me into a whole other um, small group communications, organizational communication, and organization development track that I ended up in. But I always was drawn to and worked with the technical folks because that's
Mm.
who my affinity was with, and I had so many colleagues in the organizational world that were like, why do you want to work with those people? They're so hard to work with. They ask so many questions, and and I was like, that's the part I like. That's
So,
what I really like about them. So
so you became a natural bridge between the two worlds in
so
a
yeah,
sense.
so I ended up being that bridge. But if that hadn't happened, I probably would have continued as in software or in as an engineer somehow, and then probably and maybe if the field hadn't been open to me, I would have ended up teaching. But
Mm.
I like how
Yeah.
it ended up.
Well, I think that's I still keep this question because I like where we're going with the history of what
Yeah,
people had. But yeah, I think most
right.
people today are happy with the story that they have after and how their life
Yeah,
evolved, of course.
yeah,
Um, but it's interesting that actually there is a professor trying to lure you or trying to get you out of IT, which kind of worked in the sense that you moved a little bit into that sense, but at the same
yeah,
time you came in yeah,
yeah.
through the big doors in a sense, because
Right.
you're like you say, a lot of people know you as an author, and in the agile
Mhm.
space I think you have a name that a lot of people know
Yeah,
for some of your books. Well, I think if I ask people around the primarily what they know you for is the first book that you wrote together with Esther.
yeah,
But I yeah I'm a big fan of Liftoff as well. It really made an impact for me.
Yeah.
The idea of a liftoff I knew, but what I've learned from the book, for example, is that you could do it also halfway into. Because before I knew about starting a team and I knew that was important, but I was always joining when people were already
Yeah.
building a team or were in the middle. And
Yeah.
that book really helped me to understand, but hey, wait a minute, some of these things you can do at the moment that you join, and then you can just reboot the team. I don't remember the name that you gave, but that was really a huge impact on me as well. And so
Yeah.
there's, yeah,
Well, it's
probably
kind of,
stories for all of us.
yeah. Well, you said you used a phrase before from Open Space. I think maybe it was before we started recording.
Mhm.
But, in some ways, for teams too, it starts when it starts, right?
Yes, exactly.
Same people may have been in the room together and people may have been calling them a team, but they maybe were working as a team, maybe they weren't. But once they're chartered, they really tend to be more of a team, and they really get
Exactly.
started with that. So, yeah, after they've gotten a good
Yeah.
lift.
Well, and even for me, sometimes as an agile coach or scrum master, whatever it's called, I might join the team rather late. Might also be possible, but just chartering, doing these exercises help them to rekindle the team spirit that maybe was there a long time ago, or maybe a lot of people joined the team. And for me, every time you change something to a team, it's a new team. So we need to think
Right.
again, and then chartering or anything that we do, journey lines, but all these kind of exercises really help to, yeah, to
Yeah.
bring back and to focus a team on what does it mean to be a team,
Yes.
because basically that's what it is.
Yeah.
What do we mean as a team, and how do we consider ourselves as a team?
Yeah.
And that's well, a lot of your work that you did is around that. If it's
Yeah.
agile retrospectives, the lift off, yeah,
Yeah.
I was about to say journal lines, but I mean
Five rules.
I
The five
no,
rules.
no, no, the other one with James Shore that you did
Oh,
and
that an
everything.
agile fluency model. Yeah.
The fluency model, that for
Yeah.
me is also, it's about helping a team
Mhm.
and an organization. Where are we, and what are the next steps that we need to do?
Yeah.
Uh,
Through my whole career, even before I was part of Agile, and I think one of the reasons that I fit in the Agile space is my whole career, my focus has been on healthy teams, healthy groups of people working together in effective ways and learning as groups, so that
mm,
that team building, team development, and performance as well, not just for happy joy, but for actually getting things done. And then how do we most effectively learn together has always been the focus of my work in one way or another, and it is the continuing theme. um, and
mm.
I, of
Yeah,
course, I only realized that in the last few years, but that's definitely true. That's always been my interest.
yeah, yeah. It's not a surprise. It's definitely something I see and I recognize in a lot of the things about the learning and everything
Mhm.
as a team. And I'm glad that you also put the word healthy there, because that is a huge important part of it.
Yeah,
Uh, in Of course, in agile in general, but
yeah,
it's important.
yeah.
Okay, I want to go to the next question. Is that what do you consider your biggest challenge? And when I say this, of course, I keep adding in the videos that the biggest challenge that you want to share. Of course, you're big enough to decide what you feel comfortable in sharing. But let's.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Really, I think my biggest challenge, I've I've encountered a number of challenges in my life, and I they are all opportunities for learning, and so I have valued all of them. But I think my biggest challenge has been the past few years when I have been in a very different role with the Agile Fluency Project. And after we wrote the article, Jim and I thought we were done. We wrote that first article. This is what we've observed. It was just a kind of a matter of, we just want to share what our observation is. And then people started getting in touch with us and asking us about, some people just took it and ran with it, and that was great. Other people started coming to us and saying, well, how do we implement this? How do we take the ideas from this article and actually apply them in our organizations? And people, like vice presidents and scrum masters, everybody is, and sometimes team members are asking those questions. And that caused us to think, maybe we should create some kind of structure around this. And out of those conversations, we decided to actually form the Agile Fluency Project, which, if anybody's interested, go to agilefluency.org and it's all there.
We'll add a link to the show notes and to everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And but what we had someone else who was a part of pulling that all together. And for the first year or two, he was the one that sort of was the manager. And Jim was out exploring other things, and also, building his game and making those kinds of contributions to the effort. And I was out just talking about it, going conferences. Jim was doing some of that too. And then that person who had been managing left. And we had to make a decision about whether we would continue the project without that person, or if we would just close it at that point. And we felt like we were still getting requests for help. We were still getting people, other coaches were asking us, how can I coach from this material? We had developed some other kind of supporting models and instruments to go along with it that we were using. And so we decided, no, we'll stick it out for a while. And so at that point, I ended up stepping into that general manager role. And I had been a manager inside organizations before. I'd had a number of different interim management gigs, or being a part of an organization in a leadership role. But and of course, I'd had my own small business for a long time. But this challenge was new. This was being a leader of this kind of an organization was really a new challenge for me. And it helped me understand even more the kinds of issues and expectations and things that people that I work with live under in their organizations. But it also took me away a bit from having the time to do a lot of coaching and consulting and the other things I like to do. So, and then, of course,
you were more in an organizational role, or
I was much more in an organizational role. Yeah. I was a partner, and I was the general manager. I was I had a title called Chief Connector. I still have the title of Chief Connector. But basically, I was, the team that we assembled of trainers and administrative staff and stuff. I was the leader of all that, and part of the challenge was it very much helped me see my gaps. The places where I really wasn't as well suited for that, where my learning edges were to be in that job. And that was a lot of the challenge, is doing that. And, figuring out how to meet those challenges when they weren't part of my, I know how to talk about myself. I know how to engage with people if they want to come and have me come to their company for a while. But I had never really been in that sort of marketing role where I was marketing on behalf of a lot of other people. So I had to learn a lot about that, about what parts of that I could do, what parts of it I couldn't, what help I needed. There was a whole exploration of that was quite the challenge, and continues to be quite the challenge. I mean, some of those things I figured out, other things I haven't, and so I'm still working on them. And so it's very much an ongoing learning project. And then putting that together with the reality that I'm just becoming an older person, right? And so in some ways, you know, things are just changing about me that I need to take into account and manage as well, and so to make sure that I'm getting things done through other people, because I just can't do it all myself. And so how do I more effectively do that? So it has been really very much a learning challenge for me, and I've enjoyed it for the most part. There have been times when I have pushed myself too much and gotten kind of close to burnout. So I have learned how to recognize the symptoms of that, and what I need to do in terms of stepping back, and who I need as advisors who will help me know when I need to step back from pushing myself too much. And it's just such a complex of things that has arisen as a result of taking on that role and doing that work.
Yeah, I can imagine, because the agile fluency model itself, I still remember reading that article for the first time and being drawn to it, and trying and how to do it, and then have a few workshops with you on how to use it. But there is also like a kind of, it's not in competition with the scaling models, but at the same time, it is important that people that look at the scaling models maybe look more at the fluency model, because that will help them for some things more, because at least to help them understand where they are, and to help them to see what they need. So you're there, like you say, before you needed to do marketing about, okay, this is Diana and this is what she can do, and now it's about a model that is in a way in competition with other things, even if it's not in competition, because you're playing on a different field, you're playing a different game, but you need to explain the game to people at the same time as explaining the model. So that's a whole different marketing and explaining to do. I can imagine that's if you've never done that, that's
I think the first word that I remember learning that was a really new word to me, in the way it was used in the IT and software world, was orthogonal. And I think it's like the agile fluency model is not in competition with any of these other approaches to agile adoption. It really is orthogonal. It can exist in the same space, but it's not at all trying to do the same thing. It's trying to point out, well, I guess it's in competition in the sense that it is trying to point out the ways in which there is not a one size fits all in agile, that we need to think in more nuanced ways about what the needs are in our organizations, and what we're trying to accomplish in our organizations, and how different ways of engaging with agile can help in different situations. And so anybody who's trying to push kind of a one size fits all solution is
going to lose.
Is probably not, well, but probably isn't going to be drawn to the agile fluency model, because we're saying, no, you've got to consider a lot more, a lot bigger context. But beyond that, we have no attachments. The model has no attachments to particular methodologies
Oh.
or even particular practices. It's what you need where you are, and it's a way of helping you figure that out. And so it was a really different kind of thing to try to sell to people. Also, trying to being a person who is selling training programs, which I had always been more a consultant than trying to sell training workshops or those kinds of things, particularly on behalf of other people. So
Yeah, on top of that, because before you were, well, you had your small little business, but that's basically Diana with a few people that you worked with, I think, but that was not a huge consultancy organization, huh?
right, right,
So that's
yeah,
indeed again something totally different.
right,
So thank you for sharing, because it's I think it's one of these things, and this is what I like so much about that question, is that what I like is that you're so open about your challenges, and I see a lot of people in the agile world doing this. This is
yeah.
why I'm asking. And sometimes people don't realize, okay, well, you're a big name in the agile space, and then people sometimes think, oh, but these people, they have figured everything out. No, you're still learning on a day-to-day basis. So basically,
As far as I'm concerned, if you're still alive, there's still opportunities to learn things. So,
yeah,
yeah,
but sometimes people that start out either in agile or IT, sometimes people, I have a son who's at university now, so he's like, okay, I have to finish these things, and then that's things might be
mhm,
learn. No, there was still a
right,
lot of other things to learn in the future.
right.
Um, we already people think I know, and I know every time I see you, you have some new ideas, you have other things. So for me, you're a person who's has a lot of passion, a lot of driven. So what is, do you know what drives you, where that passion is coming from?
Yeah, I do. And years and years ago, probably even in the late 80s, so it could have been quite a long time ago, maybe 40 years or so. I went through, somebody had suggested to me, had suggested to a group of people that I was in, that it might be useful to figure out what they called a personal purpose or a personal mission statement.
Mm.
And so I went through a process of doing that. And the interesting thing is, I actually used 5 whys to do it.
Mm.
It's like, so this is a thing that seems to draw me. Why is that? Right. And I learned to use this process, and then used it with a lot of other people. The idea, when you get to a place where you can't actually continue with the fight, you get to, well, why is that? Well, it just is. Well, why is that? Well, that thing before, that's how, and it's like, it's just so central to you that there's no further why.
Mm.
That's your purpose, right? It's who
Okay.
you are, right? And what I realized was that my personal mission statement, personal purpose, I don't even remember how I wrote it then, but it was very much around the recognizing the amount of time that people spend at work and the need for workplaces to be healthy, not only for the people who are working in them, but in order to be productive for the business or for the organization. That's where that kind of performance and productivity is going to most likely come from, is if people have the kind of environment where they can be successful and so on. And
And
that,
like you said earlier on, it's not just about the humpapa and about
right,
singing
right,
kumbaya, but really healthy environment to
right.
become productive.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my job in the world, my purpose was going to be to model that was possible,
Mm.
to help people find their way to creating those kinds of workplaces. And so when when Sharon and I were, I mean, I still use this as kind of a catchphrase, but it really arose out of Sharon Buckmaster and I from my former consultancy. We came up with this idea of the best job ever. You know, I love my work. I have the best job ever. And that can be said by every single person in the organization.
Oh, at all levels.
At all levels, people need to be able to say that. You know, I'm excited about going to work on Monday because I enjoy the work I'm engaging with. I like the people I'm working with. I feel productive. It feeds. And that was my job in the world, was to make that happen. And then along with that, then later on got added on the idea of, well, it's a lot about learning. And so we need to get really good at learning. And so I've learned everything I can about learning along the way and still have more to learn. And then also that we need to be seeking joy. If we can't regard our work from a place of joy, then there's something needs to be adjusted. And there are a lot of knobs you can turn there, but that is possible. And that's why I so value the people in my life who are willing to sort of alert me to the fact that they sort of see me heading toward burnout, because that's when I'm losing my joy, right? And I want to make sure not to do that, because I just listened to your interview with Linda Rising recently, and you referred to that, the airplane, put on your oxygen mask before helping others, right? That's what it's all about. We've got to, I have to keep staying in a place of joy and focus toward creating this workplace world. Or, I can't help the other people around me.
Exactly.
I can't model that for them. And so being a model for that is really important to me.
I like that you say that. Yeah, you are basically, well, what you reminded me of is that I have said already to many people that I've never had that Friday feeling or that Monday feeling, or I have to go back to work, or thank God it's Friday. I don't think I've had that at least not in the last 20 years since I'm doing things in the agile world. Right. And I'm not going to say I've never had a bad day. That's something else. But I really am happy with the job I am. But I have to be careful to indeed at some point to realize that, wait a minute, at this point for this client, I'm what Jerry Weinberg would say, I'm too much pickled, so I'm too much changed, and I don't have any joy anymore, and I lose my energy to help these people. And that is important. It is important to realize that, and to in a sense watch my own energy. And I'm happy. I know that my partner, for example, from time to time, she might tell me like, okay, or ask me, are you still happy at that client? Is it still working? Because like you say, sometimes the people around us see this much better than we do. And that helps me, and I hope to ever get out of these kind of situations before it becomes a problem. And again, a bad day is not bad. It's okay to have that from time to time. But if you really, like you say, and on a path to burnout, that's not helping anyone. Not you, not the client, not the people that you're trying to help. That's for sure.
Well, and the occasional bad day helps you to recognize the really good ones.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I wouldn't be interested in a flat line, because even if the flat line is really high, you don't realize that. I prefer the ups and downs, and it's that helps to understand. And of course, I hope I have more ups than downs. But again, it's always, it's both. You cannot have an up if you don't have a down, and vice versa. I liked what you said about finding your your goal and to do a personal thing with using the 5 whys. So it would be interesting to see in the comments if people have tried it. I've never used that technique for this, so I'm definitely going to try out. I try to think about where do I want to go and what's on my path for the next 5 years or something like that. Every time I go on holiday, at least once a year, I try to take that. And so this is probably going to be an exercise I'm going to use next time I'm going
Yeah.
to do that. So I would be really interested to know if
Yeah.
other people have done that and have learned something from that, or other techniques that people have used.
Yeah. It helps to do it with a partner, to be able to have the partner asking the and why is that part, and then so first, well, and maybe not, at least for me as the extrovert I was at the time, it was really helpful to have somebody prompting and asking the, you know, why are you doing what you're doing? What's important to you about it? And then, well, why is that? And then, well, why is that? And I think I could do it for myself now, but starting out, I really needed that other person to be asking those questions and hearing my answers and kind of reflecting my answers back. That was really helpful to me at that time. Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful advice, because I've been working with coaches for years, actually. Not always the same coach, but multiple coaches. But these kind of exercises, you made me realize I mostly did on my own. I've done a few exercises with my partner about what's the house that we want to live in, but really about where do I want to go professionally, I mostly done on my own. Sometimes with the help of a technique that can help me, but so it's a good way to think about asking someone to guide these kind of exercises. That's something I've never done, and I didn't even think about it until you just said it. So that's an interesting thing to think about. Why did I do it? I'm more the introvert. Thanks to agile, I discovered my extrovert side more. But these kind of exercises I've mostly done on my own. So that's an interesting observation on its own, of course.
Yeah.
I want to go to the next question.
It's not
Okay,
exactly
go ahead.
5 whys either. It's not exactly 5 whys. For some people, it takes 7. For some people, it
Oh,
only
yeah.
takes 3. But it's being sure to recognize that feeling of, well, I can't go any further. It just is, that gives you the clues that you found it. Yeah.
Yeah, the 5 whys for me, I have the picture I always use for the 5 whys is a hand with 7 fingers on it, because the 5 is just an arbitrary number, and you know it when you're at the end. That's for when you're looking for root causes. That's the same thing. At some point, like, okay, I can't go any deeper anymore. So yeah. I think everybody who's used the 5 whys the way it was intended knows that it's not about the number 5. It could be 3, but in most cases it's at minimum 5, and sometimes 7, sometimes 10. It depends a bit, and sometimes you end up with something. Hey, wait a minute, that was already there. So there might be a loop. So I need to see if there is another exit and another way to go in. That's a very good addition, because it's many people misunderstand. This is the kind of thing that people read somewhere and they think 5 whys, 5 questions. Okay, I understand it, without following a training or without doing anything. And it sounds simple, but it's not easy to do.
Right.
I want to go to that next question about what do you consider your biggest achievement? What are you most proud of?
Wow. I think I'm most proud of the relationships that I've created in my life and where they've gone. I mean, I can't. I don't love one book more than another. I don't.
It's like your children. You all love them equally. Yes.
Yeah, right. And I guess maybe the biggest achievement has been to live my life in such a way that I do have standing in my community, and I have people in my community that care about me, that trust me, that uh, yeah, I think that's it. It's just that this has been this journey that has brought me to where I am now. I don't know exactly where I'll be next, but where I am now um, has done that in a really lovely way, and that's why I'm so excited about getting back to in-person conferences. I mean, Zoom, I, these platforms are great. The opportunity that you and I would have to talk, living as far apart as we do, would be really rare, right?
Mhm. Right.
But in before COVID, those in-person conferences were a way to have sort of intense interactions that created friendships that last across the miles. And so that's been really important to me, that I've been able to, and then and that I've been able to contribute back to those relationships, offer gifts back in the form of the books, in the form of talks, in the form of quotes that I fell out of my mouth one day, and then other people went, "Ooh, that's cool," and kept saying it. um,
And
that
people keep telling you, Diana once said, and you're like, did I? Okay, I don't remember anymore, but yes, thank you, something like that.
yes, that happens more than you might think. Um, but also, as a part of that achievement, I mean, I'm a big believer that everything has an upside and a downside, right? So being that well known in the agile community um, creates some kind of responsibilities and expectations. And so I guess the second part of that big achievement is that that I have a place in the agile community, in the bigger agile community, at conferences and in people's mind share around the books and so on. But that here at home, I don't have that standing. So it helps to keep me humble. I think if I lived in that world all the time, it would be a struggle and I would get jaded by it and so on. And so the balance that I've created in my life, or that has emerged in my life, where there's a place I can go, and I really feel that sense of belonging in that way, but that carries with it some expectations and leadership commitments and so on. And then I also have a place in my life where the expectations are very different, and and my contributions are very different, and I'm not so public. And so I've got that balance between the two. I was shocked one day. It was very funny. I was shocked one day. Portland is a city of many bridges, and some of them are quite long, and because
Mhm.
we're built on a river. And I was driving across a bridge one day, and a car came up alongside me, and we kind of looked at each other, and as you do, and then just kept driving. And all of a sudden, this other driver starts honking his horn. And I was like, "Are you honking at me? I don't know." And I look over, and he's pointing at the headphones that he has in his ears. And he's pointing at me. And he's like, you know,
I'm
it's like, I'm
listening to you.
and I thought, oh my gosh, they found me. I've been found in Portland. I thought I was, immune here, but that's the only time that's ever happened to me in my own hometown. So that's been kind of nice. But where it happens a lot when I go to a conference, people are constantly like, "Oh, I'm so happy to meet you," and stuff, and that's great. in there. And it's kind of
I
nice.
recognize that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it reminds me a little bit of when you said when we challenge each other or when we inspire each other with working
yeah,
with our children. One of the
yes,
things I liked about working with my son, I remember talking. Well, one of the
yeah,
reasons why I wanted to do this is that they would understand a little bit of what I was doing, because I've been talking. Well, I've been talking with my parents also about their work when I was young, and they
right,
kind of explained it, but I never really understood it. And
right,
by bringing my son with me on stage, he kind of like understands it.
right.
And I realized at some point that I kind of expected also he would respect me for that. And the kind of the opposite happened, because at some point, with like teenagers are, you sometimes get into an argument. And he said something like, "Yeah, but Dad, what you do, anyone can do, because even me as 13-year-old, I can do that," or something like that. And that,
Uh,
like you say, you're put back on the ground, which is, it was, if I look back, it's just funny.
mhm,
But it realized, like, okay, yes, at home you're dad and you're not the speaker or the author or whatever. It's really
yeah,
like you are the person who's there, and you shouldn't be put high as a dad
yeah,
for these
right.
kind of things. But it was interesting that I realized that somehow, yeah, I got into that trap as well, like you say, because when you're there on stage, that, yeah, there is a
Mhm,
rush, and there is that ego that
yeah,
sometimes takes over when you get the applause and everything that comes with
right.
it. So
Yeah.
it's good to have that balance. I agree there. We need these kind of things. So thank you for sharing, because it's indeed, it's a very interesting story that you have about the different kind of parts that you do.
Yeah.
It's Let's go to the next question, about, because a lot of the things that we talked about, and this is new from the blog post and the book that
Mhm,
originally was from Who's Agile.
right.
I noticed that most people who are in the agile space, we all have our kind of small little things that we do to help ourselves, to help to do our work, basically. And so,
Mhm.
is there something that you can share that you say, this is something that I really do that helps me a lot?
Um, well, pairing and collaboration. I mean, the more I can um, be working together on a goal with other people, the better the outcome. There's, particularly, well, writing is an example. I don't know if it's the best
Mhm.
example, but it is an example. Um, two people, even if it's just two people, and now with Esther and David, there's three of us working on the Agile Retrospective second edition. Our perspectives are different. We see different things. And bringing those differences together, if you know how to work collaboratively and not be, it's my way or the highway, but if you know how to collaborate and work together on solutions when your perspectives are different, it only makes the outcome better.
Mhm.
And
It's,
um,
yeah, I recognize that. And from what I understand, I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, but I think, especially the first book, I think I heard once a story that you and Esther actually, you physically met to work on that first book, to do the writing in a hotel, or I don't know where, but to physically write it together, right? Is that
right. Oh,
correct
yes.
memory?
Esther and I did that. Ainsley and I did that. James and I did that around the article. Of course, that was a much, didn't take quite as
Smaller
much.
or
It's a smaller product. Um, the I would have done that. Trisha Broderick and I discussed it for this most recent book, The Lead Without Blame, which will be out in September, by the way. Um,
Mhm.
the but we couldn't because it was COVID.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time on Zoom together, and with working on a shared document online, and that.
You still were working together at the same
Oh,
time, but
yeah,
just not in the same room, but
yeah,
in the mental space, in the same mental space, I would
yes,
say. Is this a
yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah. And then, in the times when we weren't together, we would get ideas and, share them with each other when we got together. But yes, working in that way has made every part of my life better. I mean, I no matter where I am looking for ways to work collaboratively and find my way through that. And no matter what my role is, whether it's a leadership role or I don't ever take on individual contributor roles. I'm always looking, if a client invites me as just an individual in, I'm like, okay, so where's my planning team? Where are we going to work together? How are we going to accomplish this together? Because as our friend Pollyanna Pixton used to say, the answers are in your business. So I'm just here to help you go find those. So who's going to be working on that with me? So it's just always looking for that set of collaborators and looking for ways to work together in as healthy a way and safe a way as we possibly can. I feel like safety is part of healthiness, but that's for everything I do.
I,
That is important. Yeah.
I like that you bring it back also to your consultancy, because this is something I recognize, that when you jump in, well, I can bring in knowledge and you can bring in knowledge about the agile space or retrospective, anything, but they need to bring in the information about the company, because there is a collaboration there. It's not just us, you, me, or anyone just
Right.
coming, like you say, with a one tool answer and that will solve everything. No, we have to gradually work together. And even more important, I think, once we leave, they have to be able to sustain it.
Right.
If they're dependent on us, then we can only work with one client, and that doesn't scale for nobody. So
Yeah.
that's not interesting
Right.
for no one. So
Yeah.
it's
I mean, from the very beginning, from like the late 80s, early 90s, I have always regarded the consulting part of my work as, in every engagement, my job is to work myself out of the job, to
yes,
transfer
yeah,
as much knowledge and skill and ability to respond to whatever's going on to whomever I'm working with as as I can bring. And get them to the place where they're like, well, why is she still hanging around? And sometimes we get to a place where they're like, well, we really like having her around. We like talking with her. And it's like, now it's time for me to leave. We have
yeah,
another, I think Olav Levitz, that talks about the Nanny McPhee consulting,
yeah.
while you need me, I will stay. But once you don't need me anymore, I'm going to go. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
I love talks
Yeah.
like you say, like we love this
Yeah.
as well. That's I think it's really I'm a big fan of pairing, so I don't need to tell people that, but it's good that you bring it up, because we don't always see that as a personal agility. People sometimes think that this question is only about the small little tools,
Mhm.
but pairing, and partially, of course, you come from the XP side, so we see pairing as a programming thing, but it's not just programming. It For me, it's working on everything,
Right.
pair presenting, pair writing, and everything that we do there.
Well, and there are so many skills, both technical and what Jim Shore calls essential skills, that are needed to be in a solid collaboration. You've got to know how to make decisions together. You've got to know how to, um, you know, to bring two ideas together and create something better out of a third thing that's even better out of them, and not rather than picking one or the other. There's just all of these skills that you need that are so universal across so many different situations. And that's what I think personal agility is about, because it also builds resilience. I mean, that's one of the things that this book, the Lead Without Blame book, the subtitle is Building Resilient Learning Teams. And this idea that if we have the skills to learn together as a team, and improve ourselves, create co-intelligence, understand power dynamics, and know when they're going to work for us and when they're working against us, because they do both. And understanding the issues around inclusion and what we sacrifice if we don't include people with different perspectives than ours, and what we gain from that, and all of those kinds of things is what builds our resiliency. So when something like a pandemic comes along, we know we can respond in a way that will keep us safe and healthy, because we know we're going to be able to learn our way through it. We've
Yeah,
built an experience that we can do that. And otherwise, people just get so anxious and so worried that it affects our mental health. It affects all kinds of things if we don't have that kind of confidence. And it comes from being able to, move our collaborations to a much higher standard.
I like that you say that, and what the subtitle that you gave to your book, because at this moment I'm working with a friend on a presentation about do we really want agile transformations, or don't we more want to look at at learning organizations, because it's really, that's what it's about. We want to create learning organizations that are able to do all the agile things themselves, and it's yes, of course, it's nice that I can help as a coach and that I'm hired to do these kind of things, but I prefer, like you say, to get out of as quick as possible, that they're able to learn on their own. And they will call me back if at some point they think they need a new idea or a fresh idea or something. But I really want them to be able to stand on their own and not depend on all of that, and that resilience. And well, let's not completely go into that because it will take us a long time. But I think the pandemic showed us also that most companies were able to do that, because a lot of these companies, within one day, we completely changed from working together to remote. And I'm not going to say it worked perfectly. There were definitely a lot of troubles. There's a lot of hard things, but we made a shift worldwide almost instantly without much preparation. And so the world has shown, or the people in the world has shown or have seen, that we are resilient at much more levels than we could have predicted, I think.
Yeah. Well,
and that brings me, go ahead.
Well, and to kind of be clear-eyed about what is, and the idea that, we're going to go back to some kind of a normal, when in reality, we're creating normal all the time, every day. This is what's normal for today. And,
yes,
do I know what's going to be normal for next month? I don't know. I'm making plans for flights and things, but I have to be ready to change my mind about those things if I need to. If the information that's coming in says it's going to be different, well, okay, it's going to be different. It's the only way through, I think. For me, I know it is.
Well, I remember in 2004, 2005, the agile world was saying that remote work is totally not possible and you always have to be together. And even at that time, I did some remote work and it kind of worked, but we didn't have the tools and a lot of problems were still there. But we saw in the pandemic that remote works it works totally different. So we have to change our way of working. We've learned a lot, and some of the tools that you've written and that you talked about in many things helped the world, I would say, in that sense. But a lot of that was discovered. What I think now we're going, the current, how would I say it? Working in a hybrid way, both working remote and in the office at the same time, is at this point, we don't have a solution for that. At this point, the answer is really like, don't do it, because we don't know how to figure it out, or we haven't figured it out yet.
Or do it and muddle your way through and figure it out.
Well, that's the kind
Yeah,
of thing where I wanted to go to is I think in 10 years' time, we will have discovered that it is possible and we will do it in a different kind of way. And I don't like the answer that don't do it because it's not working. Well, the answer is really like don't do it because we don't know yet how to do it. But then, like you say, we could just try it out and figure out together how could we make it work better, because the reality is that from today on there could be a lot of people that work in a hybrid way of working. And hybrid as means sometimes in the office and sometimes at work is one way, but hybrid as in hybrid meetings where you have people in the office and people at home, yeah, it's a different kind of world that we still have to discover a lot there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it brings me kind of automatically to that next question about remote work. So you've been into that pandemic. You said it already earlier on. You really like to be in person. You get a lot of energy of that. What have you learned about remote working in the last 2 years that you want to share with us?
Um, what have I learned? Well, I've learned a lot about how to use the tools and the technology, and have been amazed and pleased at how hard, obviously, the people who create these tools and technologies have worked to adjust and keep up with the new feature requests, and the, well, this tool would be great, but it doesn't do this yet, and and trying to respond to that. I mean, it's really quite amazing, and it gives me hope. Like, I mean, it's one of the reasons I think we'll figure out the hybrid thing, because people are working on it, and
Mhm.
they'll take in feedback and they'll figure it out. So one of the things I've learned is that I can trust that even if it's not working now, there's somebody out there who's working to make it better.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
and then personally, the thing I have learned is I I really value so much the distance relationships that I have. And while I still have questions about large groups on Zoom or whatever platform, and can I really? I know there are also people working on effectively facilitating in that setting, but it's just it's weird. It's not what we expect as humans. But in a call like this with one other person, I can actually feel pretty comfortable, because you and I, especially if I'm using a platform where I can turn off my self view, you and I would be sitting across a table or on a couch and looking at each other and having this conversation. And
Mm,
I can't experience the rest of your physical self, but I can experience a lot this way. And I've had some very rich conversations. And Tricia and I working on the book has been great, being able to do this, just the one-to-ones. I and being able to do that over great distances, I value very much, when we're having to work in the way we're working. And I mean, even otherwise, because I couldn't just fly everywhere to have one-on-one meetings, right? Um, but I am curious about what's going to happen with how we're going to make the large group things better. I like things like spatial chat and stuff, where we've got a little more movement, and we can we can look at people a little bit differently. But still, how do
we're
we?
not there yet.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not really there yet with the large groups. I mean, yeah, I can put 49 people on a Zoom screen, but that doesn't
Yeah,
mean
but then
I can,
it's all very, very
yeah,
small. Yeah, that's
yeah. Or, just to be able to walk around the room when they're all in breakout groups and listen to the buzz, and know just by hearing the buzz how things are going in all of those breakout groups. I don't have any way of doing that yet.
I just had an idea. If you would just have, and I don't know, probably nobody from Zoom is listening, but if indeed, if you would be able in Zoom to just see, to see, I don't know, something that shows me what's the level of noise in all the breakout rooms. What
Oh
is
yeah,
this very that might be an interesting one, because that's exactly what I do in a group.
right.
Like you say, if you're in an agile conference and you have 10 groups, you have one group where there's a lot of discussion, there's another that there's actually no one talking. Okay, you kind of feel like I need to go there or there. You
Yeah.
don't have that with Zoom. There is no way. And that might be, tools like that
Or
might
any
be
of the
interesting.
platforms, as far as I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So
just using Zoom now,
yeah,
but
right,
as an
right.
example.
Yeah, that's like Kleenex. It's just, um, yeah, yeah. I mean, those kinds of things are still, and I'm still looking a lot for what I call human solutions to human problems, when a lot of what we get are technical solutions to human problems. And
But you need
yeah,
we need the tools to help us to do the human thing, because
right,
the tools we need for the solution, but it still stays the facilitator who will decide, I'll go to that room or that room. It's
right,
kind of that's the kind of thing you're saying. Yeah, yeah, it's I
right.
recognize that a lot.
Yeah,
IT people sometimes have the idea that tools will solve the problem. No, tools will need to help us and they can guide us, but the real,
yeah,
well, it stays, individuals over interactions over processes and tools. It stays for whatever we do. uh,
yeah.
so that's the kind of thing. But thank you for bringing that up, and also the part that you said in the beginning about learning, because you learned a lot of these things. Do you have a special learning technique, or did you do anything special to learn about these tools? Did you do anything special, or was it just, yeah,
I did, yeah,
learning?
no, I did some special things. I mean, I have colleagues who are much more inclined to really investigate all the settings and all the everything that comes out and stay abreast of the latest versioning and that kind of thing. And they are always willing to share with me what they learn. And then I attended two different um, like three or four session workshops on using tools on and what the for instance, Enrico Teoti was doing a workshop for a while where he highlighted things like the difference between one kind of online whiteboard tool and another kind of online whiteboard tool and a third kind of whiteboard, and what were their strengths and weaknesses and how did you accomplish things by using those tools. And so that was very helpful. Somebody else going out and figuring some of that stuff out, and then I could show up and learn from them was very helpful, because I'm not the person that's going to learn that stuff on my own. That's going to just dive into the settings and figure it all out on my own.
Plus, it
So
takes a while before you can do that with multiple tools and everything, and
right,
so we can learn
right.
from each other. Eh?
That
It
exactly.
kind of reminds me. It kind of reminds me of a trick I've learned, or that I heard a lot from Chris Matz.
Mhm.
That he said, when people go, well, at the conference, you're not able to go to all the
No,
sessions because you
right,
just need to select. And so what he's doing is that he sends his friends to, he goes to different settings as his friends. So usually you would go together with a friend and then you have a discussion, and he would do the opposite. He would say, I go to this session, you go to that, and afterwards we compare notes, or you tell me what was interesting about that session.
right.
And then Liz Keogh told me that today he's doing it even more. He's like, he's not even going to conferences anymore. He sends his friends to conferences, and they will tell him that's the session that you need to look online or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's like, it's scaling the learning.
right,
And sometimes as a community we need to do that. And it's not like I don't
right.
want to do it, but like you
Yeah,
say, you want to learn about all these different tools, then it's
right,
good. And somebody is really good, and maybe that's his or her job to
yeah,
learn about tools. And you're more like, I'm the facilitator, but I need the tools. Okay, let's find
right,
out someone who
right.
knows all these tools and who can teach me in an hour the differences between 3 or 5 tools, and which
Yeah.
one then I can select the ones I like.
Well,
That's
and what I like about that, about your example, is in terms of human solutions to human problems, right? Relying on your network of personal connections to make that happen, to be able to bring that together. And you know who's going to be, if you have a good connection with people, you know who's going to be interested in what kind of sessions, who can you go to ask for those things. When, do you want to bring everybody together for an online coffee while they do the exchange or whatever? You can use the tools, but the real heart of it is the fact that you have that network, that
yeah,
group
exactly.
of people, and so that's really important.
And it's like you say, it's the connection, it's talking to people, it's knowing, and like you say, it might be that you like a session that I don't like, but you
Right.
can maybe still teach me something that is about that session, because this is something more for you and maybe something else less for me. Like you say, you might be less interested to learn about the gory details about all these tools, but you're still interested to learn which one is good for a lean coffee or whatever. So that's the kind of thing. That's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's really interesting to connect again the individuals and the tools and the processes and how that works again together. Um, it's amazing every time how all of these things are already in the Agile Manifesto, that a lot of that comes
Yeah.
back to this basics again every time and
Right.
again.
Yeah.
Let's move to that next question about a book. What's a book or a series? Because I think you are more interested in a series of books, right?
Yes, I have it right here. I kept it here, and I have not read them as much as I wanted to read them, but I'm still in them, and I'm still working on them. And both of these books, these two books, are by an author named Adam Kahane. And I think for facilitators or leaders who need to get books through, he has written so many great books about facilitating large groups of people through really difficult problems. And it's not negotiating, it's actually helping them come to, like this one says, collaborating, even when you are on opposing sides. And right now, with the political state of the world, this is pretty interesting to me. It's like, how do we help people come back together when they have so much isolated themselves from each other? And is is it always possible, or are there times we should just, say, nah, this isn't worth it? So there's that one. And then,
Maybe just for the people, we're recording this on the 12th of May, because
right.
the political
Yeah.
situation is changing from day to day. That
Yeah.
we might say something and then people, well, because I'm stating it because right now I've published, well, actually tomorrow I will publish the number 17 of the videos, and I think
Yeah.
I've recorded like 25. So there will be a while before this one goes live, and it might be confusing for people if they see it live and like, what's the situation? Maybe the war is over. I hope the war is over by the time this video is
Yes.
out. I'm
Yes.
afraid of it, but let's hope, let's
Yeah.
hope a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yes. And then the other books that I had mentioned when we were emailing are books by Edgar Schein. And early on, you asked a question about who
These are
has,
the
yeah,
settings, huh?
yeah, who has influenced me. And certainly Edgar Schein and his writings all the way along have. But this most recent set of the humble inquiry, humble consulting, humble leadership, and then there's another one about consulting. They have been, I read those books and there are new ideas in them, and I go, oh, I need to think more about that. But then there are ideas that I get, it's like, yes, that's the experience I had, and that's where it comes from, and now I understand. And so there's such a great collection of how to do the work we do. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. How do we do the work that we do where we're brought in from the outside and we're supposed to have the answers and we know we don't? And how do we just stay humble with that and do what we can in the ways that we can and know that we're not going to be the be all answer to everything, and yet we can help and we can become trusted advisors. And so how do we maintain that kind of stance? I think that's just so important because it's tempting to want to become more egotistic about it or more confident about it than we really deserve to be. So I really love those Edgar Schein books, and the later ones he wrote with his son Peter Schein, and they've just always been real inspirations for me in their approach to working with people in organizations. That's really made a difference for me. But I've always got a stack of books.
Well, that's what I was about to say. The hard part for me in doing this series is that I always keep adding a new book, and now you added at least 4 books to my list to read. but it sounds really interesting because, like you say, as a consultant, and before for me, one of the strange things about being a consultant is that before you need to sell yourself, so you basically need to kind of say like, I'm the best person to help you, and then once you get in, for me, I want to do the opposite. I want to say, okay, I want to listen and I want to help you discover the thing because I don't know anything. And there is that kind of duality about selling myself, knowing, and I know that I don't need to know everything. My skill is indeed in helping them discover, but somehow I need to sell to the people like I'm the right person to help you that, because that's part of getting inside the cover. And at the same time, it's like, or the opposite. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say, I think the difference is, do you go in and say, well, I'm the right person to do this with you because I'm the right person for everybody, obviously? Or do you go in and say, let's discover if I'm the right person for you? I have a lot. I have a lot to offer. Let's figure out if we can build the kind of relationship where you'll be able to take advantage of what I have to offer. And where I'm going to learn to care about you enough to want to offer it. And are we going to be able to work together, or might I recommend somebody else for you? That
I really like that answer because my mother's has worked at some point as a psychotherapist, and I remember a conversation with me that she said, this is a person, and I don't know the details, and she didn't share it, of course, but she talked about a client that she just saw. So I came to her house after a new possible client came to her, and she said, like, I understand this person, I understand all the problems that he had, and because of that, I don't feel comfortable in helping her because it's still close to my own problems is maybe the wrong word. I don't know the details about what happened there. But like you said, she cared maybe too much about this person to say, I'm probably not the right person to help you. There is someone else that I know that could help you better. And that's something I've always carried along with me as a consultant to indeed sometimes to say, and like you say, I really like the way you phrased it, like, it's not about I'm the best person in the world to always help you. No, I don't believe that. It's more about I might be able to help you, and I have a big toolbox of ideas and skills that will help you. And one of the tools is I might recommend you to a friend that might be a better solution for your problem. And sometimes in collaboration, that's an even totally different part, then, of course. But it's but I think this. I've noticed that in the past I've had clients who had trouble with that. That they said, "Well, we want you because we want the best. We only want the best." For me right now, I already know then I'm not the person to work with you because I don't. I wouldn't feel fit in that organization. But I struggled with that 10 years ago to discover that.
Right.
So it's
Yeah, the sad thing is that when somebody says that to you, I only want the best, you know they're going to get somebody that they have decided is the best, and that person isn't going to be able to help them because they're not bringing them in for the right reason, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And
but yeah, sometimes they have to discover that, huh?
right,
And that's
right,
and that,
right.
that and sometimes indeed we are brought. I without telling too much about my current client, but I was interviewed at my current client, I think 5 years ago, and that I left the interview knowing this is not going to work. I told my partner like there is no fit. And then 4 years later, we got in contact again through a friend of mine and said, "Yeah, Eve, but now they've moved on, and I think you're a really good fit." And indeed, it's working really well. And my current boss literally said to me, like, "Eve, we were not ready for where you are at that point in time." And of course, I've moved on, and I was probably not able
Yeah,
to be the right fit for them either. But both of us, me and the organization, we changed a lot in these 5 years, that this makes it the right fit. And that's also good to know, that
yeah,
maybe it's not the right fit at this moment, but there might be a time that we will be the right fit for each other.
right, right. Absolutely.
And I think that's also an important part to to tell people, that people realize that.
Yeah.
I want to move to that next question that I'm personally always most interested in hearing, is that what question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Maybe it is. I mean, I am at a different stage of life than very many people in the agile community. Um, and and so I guess, it might be related to some of the other things that you've asked, but the idea of how has my journey with agile informed the way I am journeying into this phase of my life as an older person, as a senior person. And, if I'm so lucky to be able to live to 100 into the fourth quarter of my life, right? So maybe that one.
Okay, so that's indeed, because
Yeah,
you talked about inclusion and diversity. We definitely are, well, most people that created the Agile Manifesto were already older in the sense, depending, if you look at it now, we consider that young, but still at that time, sometimes people said they were not 20, they were not in their 20s.
yeah,
But still, most of us, we have we're still a lot older these days, because it's 20 years
yeah,
ago that was created. And we have a lot of new people joining in the community, but there still is a lot of wisdom in people like you, with not just the wisdom of all the things you learned, but also indeed with the path that you took the last 20 years, and everything you learned along the way.
right.
So I'm really interested to see what's an answer there, or what do you want how do you answer that? Because it's really, I thought I had difficult questions, but that's probably even a harder question.
Well, thinking about it, it's like I'm getting clearer about how things shift and what all the time that I have spent doing this work means. And so I find myself approaching things less as a coach, um, and more as a mentor. I mean, I'm not the person for somebody to come to to learn about the latest technologies or why they're cool, or, I could care less about, well, I care a lot about artificial intelligence because I'm concerned about its impact on inclusion. But virtual reality, that's, I am probably not going to incorporate that in my life. I have an enormous richness, so don't come and ask me about those things. But if you need to know, how did we get here? And what are some things that worked in the past? And what are some things that we thought we learned earlier, but seem to have forgotten and could bring back in now? Those kinds of things. I now have the distance and perspective to be able to see. Like, I can see how the roots of Agile were in Japanese management and total quality management and socio-technical design that came out of the UK, and some of those ideas that we've kind of left in the past, but they all had the seeds of where we are now. And there's really rich understandings to pull from those. Well, I got to experience working with those ways of thinking before I got to the Agile ways of thinking. And I've been part of the Agile movement pretty much from the beginning. And so I also have seen the changes here, and I tend to stay kind of aware of what new is coming. Like, I'm very excited about the future of ensemble or mob programming. I think there's so much to learn there, and it is so reliant on some of this resiliency that I'm interested in, right? So there's that.
And again, it ties back to your caring about the healthy teams and everything there. So definitely. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot in my career about how you can have a workplace that creates best job evers and people who love their work. I know how to do that. And if that's what you want to create, I can really help you with that. But it's going to, but at the same time, I won't pull any punches. I'm like the this kind of grandma. This is how it's going to be. I'm not the rollover kind of grandma. So, so to be able to say, if this is the outcome you want, if you want high performance, if you want teams that are able to roll with whatever comes along and keep being productive and keep incorporating innovation and those kinds of things, I know what it takes to do that. And it's not easy. And so I can work to make that happen with you, but you have to be willing to do the hard things to get there. And
I like that part, because it's indeed sometimes some of these agile methodologies are sold like, okay, this is the magic pill, and they're I was looking around. I think you've seen these the people from Sweden, Crisp. They have a little box that says agile pills. That is, so it's just sweets, but if you take them, it's a nice joke. And I sometimes bring that to job interviews, because sometimes the questions go into that direction, and I say, okay, maybe just take this box and you don't need me, as a kind of joke. And like you say, you need to do the work. It's the same thing, like if you want to get fit, or if you want to lose weight, or if you want to, I don't know, stay healthy for whatever thing, you need to do some part of the work if you want to become world class. So I have a friend that is competing in the Olympics, and so this is hard work. You're not going to do that just by reading some books and just preparing the last 2 weeks. No, this is the next 3 years until Paris. So that's on a day-to-day basis. That's a full-time job. And for me, if you want to become an Olympic version of agile corporation, you need to do the work.
Yes, absolutely. And I just feel
maybe
like,
that's not what you want.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Maybe you don't want that.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, that's the thing. If you want to play the football and the World Cup, you need to do the work. If you just want to play football with a couple of friends in the garden, okay, that's fine. That's a different ball game.
Know the level
And
of fluency you're after.
exactly. So I was kind of waiting for that answer. But that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Huh?
Absolutely.
That's the kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I've asked many people to give me it's a part of our workshop programs, the Agile Fluency Project, to answer the question or to give us an example of a thing that they have done or that they have experience with that has different levels of fluency attached to it, and where they may have made a choice to not go to the very highest level of fluency. And I've heard some amazing examples. The stories are just really great about when people really get that idea about, no, here, this is what gives me the outcomes I'm looking for. I don't need to go do that, right? Um, I can play piano just fine with my friends and family around during the holidays, and we can sing all the songs, and it's great. I don't need to be on a concert stage. I don't need to specialize in Rachmaninoff, you know. That's not going to give me any more pleasure or any more of the kind of outcomes I want than what I can do right now. I have the right skill set for this, and getting clear about that is really helpful. But yeah, the what agility has given me is so much understanding that I'm really looking forward to being able to share back in even more ways. I don't know if I'll be doing more writing or what I'll be doing, but the doing more mentoring is something I really want to do. Doing some speaking. I haven't quite figured out how much of that I'm going to be willing to do, but I'm looking forward to getting some ideas about that this summer. And how much I'm going to be able to continue to participate in the broader community, and how much I'm not. I mean, it just all depends a lot on, pandemics and such like, but
Yeah, I remember talking last summer about, okay, I definitely want to go to the Agile conference because well, first of all, I missed out a couple of years because of your previous president, so I was not interested in going back to the US. Then the pandemic on top of that, and I really looked forward to that. And then this year I started out with the series, and for me it's a way to connect to a lot of people, but doing it from my own house. At this moment, if I look around, it's kind of dark here, so I think everybody went to bed already. But I can go and sleep in my own bed from the moment that we're done, and so that's different than going back to the US and then being a week over there and meeting everyone. So that's the kind of thing that I think you and I and a lot of us need to think about. What's the investment that we want to do?
Right.
And I've decided for myself that this year I'm not going to go to conferences. I'm going to do all of that connection from my home. It's partially because of the pandemic and I wasn't sure what is possible, what is not possible. And it's partially because I say, okay, I have some one son in university, another that will go and continue studying next year. So it's like, this is the last years that they're still living at home. So I want to spend as much as possible with them. And that's a different kind of investment that is for me much more important right now. And I think that's a little bit a similar kind of story. You're a different part of your life, but it's a different kind of thing. What the investment do I want to make? Like you say, if you need to go talk, and Lisa Atkins said it in her talk, is that, do I want to invest to go on a plane, spend, I don't know, 3-4 hours to go somewhere and have a talk and maybe do a workshop or anything? But that's a big investment. And why do I do it? And for her, it's part of her conversations that she has when she talks with new clients about why do we do these investments? Why is the doing this on a Zoom call not good enough? And there are good reasons to go and do it in person, and there are bad reasons. And she wants to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And it really made me think hard about, yeah, okay, that's true. Why do we want that? Why do we? Because it's an investment. That's
Right.
basically what I hear you say. How do you want to keep talking and connecting with the rest of the
Right.
world?
Well, and I'm continually kind of running experiments. I I have agreed to speak in person at a number of conferences over the next few months. The plan is to do that and then stop and retrospect, take some time and
Mhm.
say, what was the difference? How much better was that than doing this
Exactly.
over Zoom? And what kind of data from what my own body can take? What data am I getting from that? And so on. And then I'll figure out that I think that will tell me, do I not want to do any more of these? I mean, these may be the last conferences you'll ever see me at. I don't know. Or do I want to say, well, I do one a quarter, or do I would do two a year, or I mean, to kind of calibrate on what really is reasonable and possible, and how much I want to do online, and so on. But until I go have that experience again, I feel like I can't make that determination. And
No,
I've been
I understand that.
yeah, yeah. So that's my big experiment, is to go and be at some conferences and be with people, and then after a few, reflect on that experience, and what did I get from it, and what did it cost me, along all dimensions, um and was it, where were the trade-offs worthwhile and where weren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. It's well, and this is to add a little bit to the story. I said I try to do my connections with my international people or friends over this kind of conversations. Locally, I've agreed to 2, 3 conferences that are in Belgium or just in the countries around it, so that there might be some travel, but in most countries, well, if it's in Belgium, if it's in the Netherlands and in France, probably I will still be able to sleep in my own bed the same night or at least the day after. So
Yeah.
it's the investment is different. That's the kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I, like you say, it's good to indeed do some kind of experiment. I think both of us were too much into the data and into the science to just say, okay, it's not because in the past physical that brought something that it will still bring it. Like you say, we've grown older, and so our bodies need other kind of things. I've noticed that I play around with food a lot more than I used to, or I think a lot more about what I eat than I
Mhm.
used to. And at conferences, I basically I don't have any control over what I eat, so that brings in another investment in a sense that people need to think about, or that I at least want to
Yeah.
think about.
I've noticed more and more conferences, though, are asking about that in their registration forms and things like that, about accessibility issues, food issues, language
Yeah.
issues, all of those things. Yeah.
Well, it's part of the inclusion and the diversity that we're working on, and I think, um, well, the Agile Alliance is doing a lot of work to improve on that. I think we see the women in Agile parts. We see, yeah, there is a lot of work about, okay. I've worked on Who's Agile in Nigeria and in South Africa, so I have a few of these things to know. But there's still so much things that we need to work
Yeah.
like you said about AI, yeah, definitely. Uh, a lot of the tools are just created by, let's face it, old white men, and they don't take women into account. They don't take,
Yeah.
yeah, black
Skin
people
tone.
into
They don't
account.
take skin tone into account. They don't. Yeah. There's a lot.
Exactly. So lots. There's a lot there. Okay, I want to move to that last question about who do you want to, who should I ask next? Who do you want to invite? And I know that we've discussed a little bit before, so there is a small list. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. Well, if Trisha Broadwick hadn't been on your list already, I would have suggested her. The experience I've had with her I knew her before casually at conferences, but the experience I've had working with her on the book the last 2 years is just really helped me to see how much richness, how much she has to offer to the Agile space. And I think, a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. So she's definitely someone.
That's her, right? This is correct.
Trisha.
It's an older picture from Trisha,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's but I've seen the well, presentation is the wrong word. I seen the announcement that you were publishing the book, and
Yeah.
I knew that she was going to announce something, and then it was
Yeah.
kind of hard. I think it was on a Friday evening, but I was still able to join most of the session, and I really was like, okay, that's another book that I want to read. It's it's interesting. And also the fact that you did it, writing it during the pandemic, and doing that whole conversation there is also brings it also another level of for me an interesting book to read,
Yeah.
because it will definitely, well, bring in other kind of ways of thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's what we see. And
Right.
Trisha, yeah, like you say, I haven't worked with her, but it definitely is one of these people
Right.
that I really like to hear and what she's saying about.
Do you want to hear some more names?
Yeah, please bring up.
Another person I suggested to you was Alicia McLean. And Alicia is a woman who lives in Southern California, and I've met her there at a number of different events, and we've gotten.
Is this correct? Is this Alicia?
That's Alicia, yeah. And she is an amazing Agile coach. And not only does she do great work with her clients, but she also has been really instrumental in organizing sort of meetups of Agile coaches where people learn from each other and exchange their ideas. And she's another one that just has so much richness to offer to the Agile community that I really want to highlight her face and her way of doing things. A third person is April Jefferson, who is right now is the best. I'm not going to say the only person I know. The best person I know for doing online open spaces, which before the pandemic, I would have told you was not even possible. But she brings to open space and to the technology. She's got that wonderful blend of being able to think about what the people need in a setting, and then what the technology can bring to that setting. That is, I think, a really unique combination. And so she's another person that I think more people should know, that she is part of Agile and what she's contributing to Agile. And then
it's one person that I had on my list. I even think I had invited her already before, but it's like I said already a few times. I prefer that people are first invited by someone else before I bring them on the show. So that's and then we wanted to go to one last person.
Yes, and that's Willem Larsen. Willem and I co-wrote a little Lean Pub book called 5 Rules of Accelerated Learning. He has been my mentor in the space of how people, individuals, groups learn, and what are the conditions that need to be set for that. And now he has now quite a bit of time really putting that into practice as a manager in an organization where he's working with several teams and making sure that they have everything they need. I feel like he's an exemplar of how to create healthy organizations and make places where people say, I love my work, and I'm doing good things and great things. So I think he would be another good person for you to talk to.
And it's I'm trying to bring you back on screen.
Okay.
Yeah, that should work. Okay, you're back. Well, for me, what I've learned or I discovered, Willem, while working with you on the language
Yeah.
hunting game, I don't know
Yes.
how it's
Yeah.
called,
Language
was
hunting. Yes.
really
Yeah.
that was really wonderful because it really made me think. I considered myself really bad in languages,
Hmm.
and I remember you talked so passionate about it at the conference that I said, okay, let's just join. And it was a very small group, I think, I don't know, 5 or 7 people, and just we just played a little game, learning some words, and was really like, whoa, okay, learning a new language and using and learning things can actually be fun and good at the same time. So it's not just fun, but I learned a lot
Right.
in that small session. And that really helped me a lot to look differently at myself about learning. So
Yeah. And I have been really amazed and pleased and I don't know what other word to use, but at the way that the energy that Willem brought to language hunting and the ideas that he was able to unpack and explore there, how those have translated into developing software. And if you
mm,
remember, language hunting happened in a group of people sitting around a table, and now he is
yeah,
working primarily in settings where people are doing ensemble programming and helping them be successful at that. And you would think language learning, and I mean, yeah, there's software languages, but that's not the point, right? The point is to build the code. But how those come together and how he has made those come together is just remarkable to me. And I love talking to him about it. And he's also working on some things in the thermodynamics of emotion, which is another kind
oh,
of extension of all of this. He runs a conference every year called the Thermodynamics of Emotion Conference that brings in a lot of complexity ideas and ideas around the physics of flow and so on. So it's just, yeah, I think he would be interesting for you to talk to, reconnect with. You've
the,
connected with him before,
it's
but
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And he was, I like I told you before, he was already on my list, just like April was, and waiting to be invited. I was not kind of not
yeah,
surprised that you invited him, but yeah, it's. But I wasn't even sure if you would be the first. It really depended on how
mhm,
fast I would talk to you before I talk to other people. Would do.
yeah,
Because yeah, it's not just, well, there is other people who already told me also about language hunting later on, said, do you know this person? It's like, yeah, I
yeah,
do know. So
yeah, yeah,
so I want to close up because before we started talking, I said we want to do it somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half, and the largest one was about 2 hours, and it looks like we're about in that same space. So that's really long. But again, I was
yeah.
worried is the long word. I knew that when I would talk to you that it really could take a while. So if people want to get in touch with you, what is a good way for people to connect with you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm pretty active there, and so I'm happy to connect with people, particularly if they say I saw you on Eve's program or yeah. Uh, I
Yeah.
tend the only
But
people I don't accept an invitation from are the folks who it really looks to me like they just want to sell me something. Then I'm a little more cautious. Um, so definitely LinkedIn. On Twitter, I am Diana of Portland. Those are
that
really
should be
the
the link.
all the two social medias that I do. And then you can always get in touch with me through the Agile Fluency Project at info@agilefluency.org. So
Okay, so I'll put I don't didn't want to put in email addresses
right,
into the link,
right,
but
yeah. Please don't.
I
Yeah,
can put it in show notes.
yeah,
People can find you, and anyway, like you said on LinkedIn, you're very reachable,
yeah,
and I think it's a good advice that people indeed tell a little bit why they want to connect, because
Yeah.
the days that we just connect with anyone, it feels over for me like a long time ago. It's
Yeah, it's
yeah.
it used to be that on every platform, when you said you wanted to connect with someone on LinkedIn, it would give you the opportunity to drop them a note about it. And now that doesn't always pop up. You say, I want to connect, and they've sent the connection request before you have a chance to write anything. And I know that happens. But if a person can drop a note about what they're interested in or why they think we have common interests, I really love reading those before I accept. So if it becomes
Yeah,
possible.
thank you for reminding us, because indeed it feels, I don't understand why, but it feels that LinkedIn is keep hiding these places to add these messages. Every
Yeah,
time I think I found it back again, then a month or two
yeah,
later, it's
yeah,
somewhere changed,
right,
and then you
right,
all of a sudden. Um,
right.
I do try, like you say, I do try to add later on a message like, okay, this was sent without
Yeah,
too quickly. I wanted to add something.
yeah,
Not always easy, because that for that usually works better
right.
on the website and then on apps and stuff like that. Anyway,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's been a
yeah,
real pleasure talking to you. It's been a long conversation, but I hope that people enjoyed this as much as I have.
yeah,
Like you say, a lot is about joy, and for me, this was a
mhm,
joyful conversation.
yeah. Thank you.
I like to hear you. Well, there was a lot of laughter. I think there's a lot of fun that I had, at least, and I think you had as well. There was just wonderful conversations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.